Hello viewers and welcome to Do Off TV. I'm here with a very special guest here, Mr. Joel DeRoss. Now, Joel DeRoss is here to have a chat with us today about Metavents, and it's something that he's been working on for, 3 or 4 years. I've probably known Joel for more than 10 years, and this project has been really all-encompassing, all-involving, and being part of that experience for me has been awesome. He's just shown me some new stuff here that has just blown me away, and I can't wait for Joel to further explain the product that he's been working on and the applications that it has, but not only for events and doofs and corporate industry, but also for humanitarian causes. So very exciting, Joel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Well, I'll provide some little bit of background. So obviously I've been in the industry for quite some time, and there was a lot of problems that the industry faces, you would know.
Yeah.
And there came a time where I wanted to do my own festival. And that as I started to think about the size and scope of what's involved, and then for the first time I actually appreciated the sort of risks that somebody was putting on the line to do something of scale. And I wanted to address some of those issues. So the game SimCity came to mind, and I just thought, why can't we just use the principle of gaming, 3D visualization, to design the events beforehand, and then simulate all of the risks in a safe environment where you can fail as many times as is necessary to arrive at the best version of what would eventually be submitted in the permit application. So the basic concept is of simulating as many different ways something can go wrong as possible, and providing a shared environment where everybody within the festival ecosystem that needs to be across the production, the safety, the operations, has a single point of truth, and that it's constantly updated, and everybody has access to that 24 hours a day. And we'll just run a little bit of a video of what that's going to look like.
So Joel, the constant updating is the most, for me, working in security and safety and being involved from the beginning of the events to look at how everything's put together from the plans to the implementation of the plans and to the event itself changes constantly, mainly due to ticket sales. So we need to expand or shrink due to not only ticket, like the amount of people that are coming in, but also budgetary requirements. And really up until now, it's been difficult because you'll organise with somebody else that's doing the plans and designs, and you communicate with them, you need to change this, and you change one thing and that affects everything else. And there's things that you don't think about. And event organisers and site managers and producers are quite often working on these things alone. And until a map gets drawn up, people don't know, they're not kept in the loop. So this system, I can't wait to get out. And sorry to stop you there, but I'm interested to see this.
Well, just before we go onto the video, just to elaborate further on that, the main objective was to get collaboration with stakeholders from the very earliest point, so that the creative visionary of the event is able to just get to work on designing their vision. But as you'll see in the video, every object has compliance information as metadata, so that before an event begins the process, so opening like a new document on Photoshop, you have to specify what resolution and blah, blah, blah. On this, it's the same concept, specify what type of event, what size, what location, what style of music. All of that stuff is then informing compliance information, and it is going to pre-populate a virtual site with all of the things that you must be compliant with from the beginning, and any change that is made will then update a risk profile of every object within that environment. So the right amount of toilets will be pre-populated, water stations, how many security guards, all of that stuff. And then as those changes are made, then, for example, a stage placed here next to a bar over here, both of those objects will run a safety simulation in the background, and it'll say that this stage needs to be moved 3 meters to the left to allow for better crowd flow.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yes. And the other thing is all of that information is also being auto-populated into documentation. So as those changes are made, permit documentation is being automatically populated until all of the stakeholders have signed everything off, and then it gets locked in, as in this is the final documentation. But a human still has to go through it and make sure everything is updated to speak in human language. It'll just be sort of dot point, bullet point initially. But let's go to the video and just have a quick look through. So what we're looking at the moment is where we were at with the prototyping of the what we're calling the 3D engine, and that is just testing the drag and drop game mechanics. So we'll have a library of every object that you would typically find at a festival, all in our database already, and you would just drag and drop those objects into the scene. And basically, once the vision of the event is designed, like Google Drive, where you can just invite collaborators, it'd be the same thing. Council, emergency services, all who are, remote, can just get an invitation to say, the first draft of the event simulation is done. From their own computers, they can log in and just navigate the entire environment in 3D. But if they have virtual reality, they can put those headsets on and do full site inspections, all within the simulation. Any recommendations that they have can actually be left inside the model. And everybody that needs to know about that particular issue automatically gets a notification to say, the local police have raised the concern about this particular area. This is all the information. Everyone gets alerted. People can jump in their own time and review that, adjust that. Once that's amended, everyone gets notified. And the other thing is, we'll just stop the video there. The other thing is that then becomes the training and induction tool as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
So security, volunteer managers, waste, they get tools to design not just their sort of forms and training scenario, induction questions, they get to design simulations, which means that we can account for real world scenarios taking place, as in 2 people don't show up, or there's something that happens that we need to know what to do in that scenario. And people are able to do that and get real on-site training, and that is all tracked.
Before they're even on site, they're able to.
Yeah, the idea is that when people get on site, everyone is an expert in what they need to be doing.
Fantastic. Amazing. One idea that I've got, I'm not sure whether your software is able to do this, but Frank from the City of Melbourne, I know he's really going to appreciate if you've got a tool there that can measure the distances between steps going up to the stage, so that's perfect.
That's exactly right. So what we're going to be populating the database with initially is all industry standard things like trusses and stages, and any brand that is currently being stocked by event hire companies will be in there by default. Where something needs to be custom made for the event, that's where whoever the production company is, or the decor people, or whoever's doing something out of the ordinary, they have their own profile where they upload any CAD or 3D file that they've used into their own profile, which is then able to be added to the whole 3D structure. Not only can we see any information that person wants to be available. It's that everybody has the ability to collaborate on those types of custom situations.
Yeah.
Which is going to be really, really important.
Really, really important.
Yes.
Because you're racing against the clock.
Exactly.
All the gigs.
Yes.
And in fact, just an experience that comes to mind is with the recent Ultra music event. They did some things. They went above and beyond for their VIPs and VVIPs in constructing the decks. And there was an issue with the handrails there, which the company that generally puts them in thinks that handrails are fine that they had there. Well, they weren't handrails, they were balustrades. Right. So then the difficulty came when compliance comes in, council comes in, and then the argument was had over what's the difference between a balustrade and a handrail. So all these things were discussed when the show's about to start the next day. So all of a sudden, all this extra work had to be done, and we ended up in a position where the show, we've got 20,000 people waiting to come into a show. We actually had probably 1,000 people waiting to get in at the gate. We still had the Pope permit signed off.
Right.
45 minutes to go before gates, and it's still not been signed off. We're still running around doing things. And but anyway, I digress. Please.
So this is a good example as to that insight that you've got into a problem that occurred on showtime. That information can be inputted into the object itself. So this is an example of Pleasure Gardens. So this is a pre-visualization that we did for them, and this is Catani Gardens in St Kilda. This is some of their stage setups. But the important thing is that after event is over, all of these issues will have occurred. And that information is typically not shared with anybody else outside of people directly associated with security or operations. And they contain valuable information that other event organisers should know about to make these things less common for future productions. So the functionality that we have to address that scenario is the post-event debrief, which means all stakeholders, security, first aid, can go back in and they can log their incidents or their issues to the geographical location they occurred in and to the objects themselves. So if there was confusion about what's a handrail and what's a balustrade, that information can be inputted into that object. That would be permanently updated in our system, and that anytime somebody drags that object into that environment, that will never be an issue again.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so this might happen at an event on the other side of the world as well. So the second any object is updated with new information, it becomes the new standard. And so this is just a concept. This is the first sort of concept video that we did of an outdoor environment. And just even though it's fairly decent resolution, we're moving towards photorealism. And this is an example of Woodstock, which is the R&D project that we've been working on for quite some time. And this is also a post-event type of feature, and might just pause the video there. And maybe if we can just go back to where the Woodstock is, if we just scroll back just a little bit to where Woodstock comes up on the screen. So like I just described with stakeholders being able to go back into the simulated environment and input their incidents, that becomes a record for forever, essentially, for that event organizer. If they want to then monetize the content that took place at the event, whether it's live videos, photos, whatever, they can then utilize that that simulation to for entertainment purposes. So people who couldn't physically attend the event on the day now have the next best thing, and there's going to be gamification features where promoters can collaborate with record labels, with the headlining artists, to create exclusive content that you can only access in that simulated environment. And when you're looking at a festival like Ultra, where you've got a fan base of a single headliner being in the tens of millions, and that person then says, yep, well, I'll license this particular track, which will be a virtual reality experience as well, that is only available within the post-event archive. And there's an agreement between the promoters, the record labels, the artists, and anybody else, booking agents, whatever. Everyone gets a clip of that. But that piece of content will be available forever, which means that even after an event is over, there's the possibility to continuously get revenue from the simulated version of that event. And the outcome of that will mean that festivals don't have to rely so heavily on ticket sales. They can actually take a loss on that day. But if they're a festival the size of Ultra and they've designed the content really well for the post-event archive, they'll be able to make any money back within days, and they'll continue to derive revenue from that archive forever. And then the next year's event will be the exact same thing, and it'll be compounding. So that then becomes a new form of revenue that exists forever, and so on and so forth, until after 10 years, you've got 10 revenue streams, which is able to reach a global audience 24 hours a day, and everybody that it was a part of those events is getting royalties from that. So that's creating financial security for the performing artists, for the record labels, for everybody. And it's taking all of that financial risk away from the festival organisers to sell tickets. And that's going to reduce the cost of tickets, because now it's not going to have to be so high to accommodate for all these things, which means more people will be able to attend festivals.
Speaking about being so high, I'm looking at that picture in a safety officer's perspective. I'm going, it's going to be fun when you got the drag and drop feature to drop a few guards in there to stop fence jumpers, and I'd drag and drop a bit of safety tape over those those poles that are there, and probably what else can I see? So
exactly
so you can do that. So this is what I'm imagining. So on your walkthroughs, you'd be able to go, okay, we need a bit of this and a bit of that, and even
and
looking
just stop
at
it there. And just one more thing is that from the instant ability to see what needs to be done in a simulated environment, that can be done within a week of somebody completing their first draft of the vision. And you don't, and you'll be walking through that with every person that needs to be there without having to travel hours to site to then use imaginations to try and figure all these things out. It's all done right at the beginning, because the idea is that the councils want these festivals, but the way in which the planning is done currently, it just does not allow for any sort of dramatic change. And Woodstock is the perfect example of when everything that could go wrong actually happened at Woodstock. And so this is going to be one of the experiences that we have available for people to understand just how all of these incidents, what was the driver behind them, what led to 500,000 people being on site instead of the 80,000 or whatever that they were expecting. How it went from a ticketed event to being a free event, and how nearly a few 100,000 people were stuck in traffic just trying to get there. And so all of these things will now be able to be available to, say, event educators. So, and this is a real key that we're really excited about, is that every time an event is archived, that becomes a environment for students to then get real world practical training at events that actually took place. All of the personal data will be stripped, but it's just the event infrastructure set up so that students can put on a headset, go on site, and the teacher can design their assignments to all be taking place within the simulation.
Very good, mate. I'm just a couple of questions. I'm going to throw you a couple of curly ones. One of the things that Doof University, Event University, whatever, being of service to events has taught me is the importance of the ability to cope well under pressure. So if this tool is able to also be able to help people, especially people in emergency services, being able to cope with situations under pressure, under a time frame, and even people sort of building things under a time frame is really good. One thing, when we were talking about time frames, one thing that I find is on the big events, when we make changes to the plans, it always takes time to get things done. Now, if you're going to build a virtual world for an event, how long would it take for that virtual world to be built? So once an order comes in, so a company, they've got this design, how long would the process be? Because what I'm looking at, I don't really know how long it would take in computer land to render out an event where everything is.
It's real time. So as I'm like SimCity, the game, as I drag and drop objects, that is available to anyone who I share that with. So every object has setup time, pack down time, how many people are required to actually set that up, what the cost of that is. So if it's a full stage with 10 different companies that are providing lights, sound, staging, labor hire, all of those things are accounted for as a cost. So when I drag and drop a stage in, I know exactly what that stage is going to cost me, how long it's going to take to set up.
But dragging it into what I'm saying, dragging it into what, so your initial world, say Flemington, for instance, or any venue that you go to, that world surely would need to be built out first.
It will already exist.
It will already
exist.
Every
venue that we are focused on is predominantly outdoor environments because we don't have to build the indoor infrastructure.
Right.
Outdoor environments, all of the data already exists. We're going to have a simulated version of the entire planet, and everywhere a party can be held on, we'll actually have that information already. So when you type in the information, I want to do a festival for 3,000 people in Victoria, 3 hours from the CBD. It will give you every venue that an event can be held on, and you can select multiple backup venues at the same time. So if I select a place in Daylesford, I can also select 2 other venues within an hour radius that can accommodate the needs of the event. In the scenario where weather prevents that event from happening on that location, all of the data that I did in my main project was already being populated across the other 2 backup projects, which means that if there needs to be a sudden switch from venues, all of that information is carried over, all of the documentation is actually already produced, and just minor adjustments can be made. But the key thing is that as site inspections can be done, the second there's even a risk of there being needing to be a site change. So all of the environments are done in real time. All of the venues will already exist in our database. Every object will already exist in our database. It is, as soon as somebody drags and drops it, it's available.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And and just the other thing on this that is more on the economic benefit for the festivals is the reason we're working on the Woodstock project was in order to understand what are the potential benefits of preserving an event in time, preserving an event to generate revenue after the event is over. What would that even look like in terms of, how might somebody price sponsorship? How much would somebody charge subscription to access that simulation, or the archive as we call them, or would they make it free and just charge per piece of content that people are getting from there? So we needed something that is from our past. 50 years ago, Woodstock happened. And the relevance of that brand has remained consistent ever since, and that every brand of speaker, of guitar, of microphone are essentially by default having they're a sponsor, because the brand is now in an environment that is going to be exposed to, in Woodstock's case, over 50 years, over 1 billion eyes. So we wanted to figure out if the Marshall speaker was used at Woodstock, and we launched the Woodstock experience in August this year, and somebody is in that environment, could they potentially interact with that speaker and then go into a virtual Marshall speaker showroom and actually try all of their latest products, or Fender, for example. But the idea is that we can turn these virtual environments into places where people can be exposed to the latest products of every brand that's represented, and actually have that be a point of sale. But the thing is that we can give every brand data on how many times people have interacted or even looked in the direction of that particular brand, which is something that events currently struggle with, is event sponsorship, because the return on investment is so difficult to quantify. But if there's something like this, we can quantify it very, very accurately, particularly with the global audience that's going to be visiting these environments.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's the drag and drop type of environment and the sort of benefits of doing that. But I wanted to talk about the patrons. So this is not just for the event organisers, but patrons are going to be able to benefit from the simulations, and this is very relevant to the harm minimisation conversation going on at the moment. So we're developing a points-based ticketing system, so that when somebody goes to purchase their ticket, there'll be a couple of very basic safety induction that they need to do, and they don't need virtual reality for it, but they will need to explore the virtual version of the event to find out where the info tent is, where water stations are, and where first aid is. And once they've identified those locations, then they can get their ticket. But there's going to be other little challenges that they can do. So if they wanted to get a discount off their ticket, then they can do a simulation of what do I do if I see somebody lying on the ground? How do I tell if somebody's overdosed or just sleeping or they're heat stroke? What do I do if I break an ankle? What do I do if I see a sexual assault or a theft, antisocial behaviour? The more of those simulations that patrons do, the more of a discount they get.
So you could be a 5-star duffer.
Yes.
And you say, hey, 5 stars.
And that's the key thing, is that the event now gets data on everybody that has run that simulation. So they can say to a council or anybody that 80% of our patrons have run all of the safety simulations, and they all know what to do in these scenarios. And that's going to have impact on their insurance, on their just their safety in general. But what we're hoping is to see that knowledge that people are getting through this festival simulations translating into broader society. And that's going to be what we're
as far as I'm concerned, and from everything that I've seen, the amount of years that I've been involved in the events industry, education is the key. You can't just keep throwing more police at it. You can't keep throwing more first aid, more ambulances, more whatever, expecting the worst to happen. You need to start educating people and before they get there. And really, just I think the idea of keeping a database on what's going on is a good idea. I think, cautious about the level of control, because at the end of the day, this is all about freedom and freedom of expression. At the same time, really got to promote responsibility.
And the thing that is our core messaging is that it is really up to the patrons as to how much they want to engage in this type of simulation, because they're going to be essentially in their profile proudly showcasing that they are, say, like a 5-star duffer or whatever, which means that they're the sort of people within the community that people have trust in, that trust has value, and that they're going to inspire others to actually be good at looking after one another, and that there's actually something to validate that people have got the skills to do that.
I love it because I'm starting a religion on doofing, doofism. That's a great way for me to be able to scope out priests. I just look at the 5-star patrons, and then they're already accepted straight into the priesthood.
And the other thing is that we partner with Holochain, which is the superior alternative to blockchain, which means that all data is everyone's own data. And so we can ensure that total privacy of information is kept for every individual, every organization, and anybody who has concerns about data. And the only time in which data needs to be exchanged is when you log into the platform and you need to allow for the platform to get certain data from you, which is purely just to identify that you are who you say you are. And when you log off, you retain all of that information. So there's no centralized location where anyone's data is stored.
That was going to be my next question, and you've answered already, because security is paramount when you're dealing with data and when you're asking questions and all of that business.
Exactly,
And wow, you're a step ahead of me. Holochain, yes?
Holochain, yes.
Right.
So this is the key thing for us being able to do what we wanted to do. Involved a lot of data. And everybody needed to be able to produce and log data digitally. And we wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable doing that, and that they had no concerns whatsoever about where that data was going to be stored and how it was going to be used. And we were looking at blockchain for a long time, but it just had way too many issues with it. And then Holochain came along, and it has none of the problems that blockchain has. And that has basically fast-tracked that aspect of the platform to ensure that everybody's data is secure.
One of the things that I'm thinking that's coming to mind, that fair enough, the events industry is great. We've had this discussion before, and I love promoters, and I love you guys that put on the shows and pay the bills and everything else, but getting them to pay money for things that aren't DJs or lasers or the big show or the big acts or everything else, it's just a cost that they find it hard to quantify. It's just another cost that adds up, and what do they get back in the back door? Now, I'm hearing what you're saying about the creation of other revenue streams and everything else, and I do see that that's going to be able to happen, and that's all good. But the events industry is only just a little bit. Like what I'm hearing here is a tool for humanity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and we'll go to the next project. But before we do, I just wanted to just touch on the issue that you raised, as in event organisers really not hardwired to invest in anything outside of what's going to translate into more ticket sales.
Bums on seats.
Yes, and that was the biggest epiphany that I had when I was doing my research. I thought promoters would just get the value of being able to mitigate against the sort of risks that would cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. But they don't see that. And I was a little bit disheartened by that, and that's when I spoke to you. And then you indicated that don't speak to promoters, speak to everybody else, because everyone is owed money by the promoters. And so it's all those people who are owed $10,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. They see the value in ensuring that an event is planned to the highest standards of safety, and that all risks are being considered, and that all the money to execute that event is available, and that if it's not, there's a revenue streams that will offset any sort of losses on the day. The main thing is that everybody wants to know that something exists to ensure they get paid. Yes. And when I realized that, I then totally changed who I spoke to. And I went to everyone except for promoters, and went to security, and went to labour hire, and went to insurers, and went to everybody else. And it turned out that it was actually councils who had the biggest value proposition to in terms of the benefits of this platform existing. Because when an event of, say, a Maitreya size, I think it was 10,000 people, that's $2.5 million of economic benefit in the space of a weekend, pretty much. When that event gets cancelled, that is all the local businesses who had to buy up, perishable produce to support this influx. This is, economic, income that the municipality is forecasting. They're already thinking about how, that this is going to transform the industry or their particular environment. And when that goes, it's not just the event ecosystem that's damaged by that. They're all damaged in whatever it was that the remainder of the deposit they didn't get is, or the whatever. But a municipality it's in the millions of dollars that they are losing out on. So when I started speaking to councils and departments of economic development, and I was able to understand what their agenda was in terms of being able to stimulate events tourism, it made total sense that they would be the ones to update or evolve their permit application process to factor in any fees associated with the permit application into the Metavents Council subscription. So when an event organizer is jumping onto the platform, in some places like, say, the metropolitan area, the cost of the planning using Metavents is free for promoters. So they can essentially just jump on the platform, do what they need to do, because it's in the council's interest to ensure that that event goes through.
Absolutely.
That everything is, that they're across everything to do with that event, and that their agenda is to give a long-term permit to events as quickly as possible, and then they can build their economic strategy based on a set number of events happening every single year and a set number of millions of dollars being injected into the economy. And anybody in the event industry benefits from the councils taking responsibility of this and making it super, super easy for safety and compliance to be done, and that to be done with so much lead time that any major changes can be addressed easily throughout the year. So on that, we'll go to how important this is for the humanitarian space, because this is where I sort of, it really sunk in the importance of what we're doing. And we'll just play the video to the, might need to skip a little bit. Skip to, and we can edit this out. So keep going.
Ultra.
Yeah, so stop here.
No, stop there, actually. Ultra. That brings me back. Can I cut in for a sec?
Of course.
I want to know how you're going to engineer a unity moment.
A unity moment?
A unity moment. Because that's the thing, right? Yeah. That's the one thing that you'll never be able to make virtual.
Yes.
It's that feeling of actually being there. You can get close to it.
Yes.
But it's that you can do everything else. You can buy the record. You can whatever else. But it's really unity moments that they're selling, or beyond that, it's the smile economy.
Yes.
So Robin McPherson just had a great chat to me this morning about the smile economy, putting smiles on faces at events, and I'm totally loving the safety and security in security of money, security of people, security of assets, which is public assets, government assets, and everyone all. Reputation of everyone else, but I've just got to say that feel it in the heart. Those union, but anyway, I digress.
But just on that, we're not trying to replace that or have anything that even claims to be able to simulate that at all. What we're trying to do is make it easier for people who have that vision of bringing people together to make them smile and have transformational experiences easier.
Yeah.
Because, and you would know just as many as I do, people who have the right heart, the right intention, brought a community together with an amazing vision, and that party wasn't planned very well. Everyone went into debt, and then that just pitted out and dissipated, and everybody's hearts were broken. And sometimes they don't recover.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that everyone who has a vision of bringing people together in the physical world has the tools to make sure that is done and that is successful, and that they can continue to do what they do and bring people together in the real world. Yeah?
Oh, beautiful, man. Just hang on for a second, I'm going to cry. All right, keep going, buddy.
All right, and so what we're going to be seeing here, so if you just press play, so a lot of the biggest just jaw-dropping moments for me was when I started to understand that setting up a refugee camp is no different to setting up a festival. You know, all of the components are the same in terms of trying to coordinate a massive supply chain, navigate complex, vast stakeholder ecosystems, and that they are dealing with the same types of environmental risks as festivals are, but the cost of failure in the humanitarian space is just mind-blowing. So what we're seeing here is a virtualization of the British Virgin Islands, and this was something that we did in partnership with our NGO partner Vihara Foundation and Argo Architects, who are the master planners. And Virgin Islands, in addition to I think 9 other islands, were hit by Hurricane Irma and Maria. That year was the most costly year for natural disasters, $309 billion. It cost the global economy to recover from those disasters. And maybe just pause the video here. So what was an issue with the humanitarian space is that they had very few channels by which to reach audiences or people who could donate towards the recovery post-disaster. Most of that is mainstream media or social media, all of which was consumed by Puerto Rico's conflict or issue with Donald Trump, who wasn't prepared to hand over foreign aid because Puerto Rico owed them money. And that took up all airwaves, all social media, and nobody even knew that 9 other islands had 90% of their infrastructure just obliterated, and that people were without food, without water, and nobody could hear those voices and those people crying out for help because of what the news sees as newsworthy is Trump and this conflict. And the issue that being able to use virtual simulation means that we don't have to wait for disasters to happen. We know where the most at-risk locations are, and we can actually design disaster risk reduction solutions, whether that be better infrastructure, relocating people from one location to another. But all of these things can be tested and simulated beforehand, and then those projects can be financed as a cost reduction initiative. And those don't need to get financing from the general public. They can be financed through the infrastructure banks, through the climate change trust funds, because that's what they're set up for.
Well, in the long run, they're going to save themselves some money if they're prepared for something to hit.
Exactly, yes. So this is the main, the thing that separates Metavents from any other sort of event platform is that we are creating the same sorts of capabilities for the nonprofit sector, but totally for free. And they're able to now not have to wait for a disaster to happen to support the communities that they're involved with. They can just design the projects. Those projects end up going into our marketplace on Metavents, and that those projects have a cost associated with them. And every ticket that is sold through our platform, we donate 50% of the booking fees and processing fees to projects in the Impact Project Marketplace, which means that there's a continuous source of funding for charities to actually do the work that they need to do. And all of that is going to be financed by any event that is selling a ticket.
Not only that, what I'm thinking is that in emergency situations, everyone's like, we don't know what to do. They're looking here, they're looking there, everywhere else. If you've got a central database with the data in there and all your suppliers and everything locked in, and you know who's who and what's what and what needs to be distributed and gone there, that's going to solve a lot of headaches, firstly, because Well, really speed. Speed is the key to be able to get recovery as quickly as you can and work it out. And having a shared database that others around the world can be helping to solve a particular problem, whether it be logistics, the supply chain, or any of that, to help on a humanitarian level.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That speed is going to be crucial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing that I want to go to now is just to actually show what it looks like on the platform. And so go to the other slide. Yep, this one. Other one. So I'll just go through what we're looking at. So when you go onto the Metavents website, you'll actually be able to see where all the festivals are and where all the projects are. And if I was to go through and click on a project, I would be able to see the project profile, all the information associated with that project, what it costs, any type of innovation associated with that project, who the people are involved in that project, each cost progress bar. So as money is coming in from the event sector, it's being channeled into particular events automatically. And an algorithm is determining which projects actually get financing based on international standards for disaster risk reduction and resilience, all sort of designed within UN compliance.
Yep.
And so it's going to be no different to a normal crowdfunding campaign, a normal crowdfunding website. The only difference is that in order for a project to be even in our marketplace to begin with, it must have run all of the disaster simulations that it must be resilient to.
Joel, you said a word back there that I hear quite often.
Yeah.
And every time I hear this word, I think, that's going to take some time to fix, or that's going to be some homework or whatever. And that word is compliance.
Yes.
So when you're talking about different areas, different levels of government, different levels of things. So what I've encountered in coming up with my plans and designs, everything for events that come up, your different councils and your different areas all have different levels of compliance and different, it is a absolute minefield. So that's just dealing with things in Victoria, let alone then you go to New South Wales, a whole different level of compliance, particularly with police and licensing, liquor licensing, you bring all that stuff into events-wise. But I'm just thinking internationally.
Yes. Yeah, so we don't build that compliance into the platform. It's a user-generated platform, which means that NGOs create a profile, and so do the regulators. And so do the councils. They just import all of their compliance information onto the platform. They manage it themselves.
So you're saying that there'd be like if they've got their shit together and organised for all their local bylaws and whatever their compliance, they can click that, drag it in, and that
will be a part of their profile. And then anybody needing a permit or to understand those compliances, just communicate with the relevant stakeholders and compliance organisations. And anytime a line item in any regulation is changed, it instantly updates anybody who is currently in a process of potentially doing a permit application, anyone who has done something in the past, anybody who is interested in that location, everyone that has an interest in that location where they're going to be subject to that compliance is notified.
That's the difficult thing, because you're dealing with something that's fluid, that changes over time, but the compliance that they get in, they're rigid.
Yeah.
So things might change, but particularly with the amount of people that are involved, or with the amount of structures that are there, and the type of structures that are there, and everything else. So the issue is, for a lot of events, they go for their Pope permit. Here it's a Pope permit. Other place might be called something else, but place of public entertainment permit in order for you to have a certificate of occupancy to occupy the space and to hold a safe event. Now, in order for a promoter to feel safe, he wants that Pope permit, so get the box ticked, that he's got the green light of approval, so he can say to everyone, "Yay, it's all good here. We're ready to party. Just come over."
Yes.
The thing is, as I said before, some of the events, it's on the last day or even at the last minute before doing it, and that's because everything changes around so much. So you've spoken about how things become how things can be changed on the fly, so to speak. We might have to do a little bit of educating government departments to be able to sync in with the whole on the fly movement and to become a little bit more lateral in their thinking in using this platform.
Yeah. And that's why they're the first early adopters.
Yep.
So what we're doing moving forward is working with all the people that have supported us over the last couple of years in our research and development, which is the event organisers, everybody within the event industry ecosystem, but councils as well.
Yeah.
So this is now a shared tool that promotes collaboration where everybody's interests are accommodated, and that it means that people are able to work together better, and that we can now fast track the compliance component, because all of that is the sort of first things that are done, and that that the councils are a part of that process and recognise that. And by the way, like every council in Australia almost has a mandate to increase their event tourism budgets.
Yep.
So it is about really tapping into the fact that councils are not just wanting better event tourism, they're being instructed that this is your priority.
Yeah.
And that we are now facilitating that agenda being done better, and that everybody is a part of that that transition in the event industry, particularly in Australia, and that's going to lead to Australia being the top in event safety and event tourism and all of that. So we're going to set the benchmark now, and that's pretty much how things are going to go.
Yay. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I'm not sure how long we've been going for, but I think we've been going for a while, but we could maybe do a part two.
I'd love to do a part two.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming in tonight, Joel. There was glimmers of sunshine before, but it's definitely nighttime now. So we've been at it for a while, mate.
That's right. Yeah.
And thank you for anyone that's been watching and that's kept interested for this long, and to learn about the events and things that are, and not only the event industry, the software industry, and on a larger scale, humanitarian industry. Thank you, Joel.
No dramas. Thank you.
Thank you, punters, and we'll see you on the next show.
All right. Awesome.
Cheers.